What's up, everybody? Welcome to Free Association, the podcast that spent the last 30 minutes doing a fully separate podcast before this podcast. That one's not recorded, though. Thankfully.
It's probably better than what this is going to be.
Do you think so?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we just basically spent 30 minutes sitting in the studio, wasting everybody's time, Donovan Bennett and I, debating on the merits of the NHL and its expansions to the southern states. That was fun. Are you concerned at all that we're going to hit a wall now that we just spent 30 minutes talking before our hour-long podcast?
No, because these podcasts are better when they're shorter anyways.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know how to interpret that. I don't know if I necessarily agree. So we've been gone for a couple of weeks. We shot a commercial that I think we're really excited about. It's debuted on Twitter. I don't think it's been on television yet. You're kind of a in the commercials all the time guy, though. So that was no change of pace for you. I see you on TV all the time. You're a television star. You wouldn't agree that you're one of our Sportsnet's TV stars?
I would not agree.
Okay, well, would you at least say that your TV...
My salary also does not agree.
Would you agree that your TV ever present?
I would
You
also
have a Sunday
agree.
show. You're the number one fill for Tim and Sid, which is our network, our Sportsnet's jewel.
I don't know if there's a depth chart for filling in.
Yeah.
I think Faisal Kamisa and Daniel Michaud and
Yeah.
Alex Xero also fill in quite often.
Yeah, you're such a good guy.
I have been on TV before. Yes,
Yeah.
you are correct. in
I'm
saying
not a TV guy. So the idea of being on a TV commercial is very exciting for me.
that. Okay, I mean, you have your own radio show. I think at this
Yeah.
point you should be comfortable enough.
Radio, what year is it?
2020 now.
Man, if this was 19, that's dark. Do you remember where you were for Y2K?
I mean, not specifically, but I remember it happening.
You don't remember where you were?
Well, I mean, I remember people, trying to go to the bank beforehand and, stocking up on water.
Oh man, I actually used to date a girl whose family straight up did that. Did the whole got the bomb shelter, set it all up with the canned goods, did the whole shebang, did that, and that was real thing that happened. We weren't as concerned.
I think there's a fair amount of people who did that.
I mean, shout out to those people. You were wrong, but you probably had tuna for a really long time. You had a lot of tuna sandwiches, I bet.
The interesting thing for me is if it's the apocalypse,
Tuna?
is this 24 case of Evian going to help me that much? Is that really what we're worried about?
Yeah, it's gonna take you through the nuclear winter. You really have to ration that thing. But we've been gone. This is our first pod of the decade of 2020. So today we just kind of want to catch up on a bunch of the stuff that we've missed with the Raptors. And luckily we didn't do a reaction pod to the Christmas Day game because that would have been unnecessary.
Wasn't much of a game.
Wasn't much of a game. Wasn't much of a Christmas Day slate until the Lakers-Clippers game. And then outside of that, it was a pretty forgettable slate. But yeah, we're going to do a couple of Raptors resolutions today. And we're going to talk about some of our impressions with this shorthanded Raptors group that just got a little bit more shorthanded with Fred VanVleet dealing with a hamstring injury. But that's the first thing I kind of want to talk to you about today is, has there been anything that you've really been impressed by or has made an impression on you watching this iteration of the Raptors without Norm Powell, without Pascal Siakam, without Marc Gasol? No disrespect to Matt Thomas.
Although they badly need him. I mean, I don't want to say I'm not impressed, but I'm not impressed because it's something that I already knew. So not to say that it hasn't been impressive, but it hasn't been something that surprised me, we should say, because I do think that this team, the least fun but most accurate word I would use about them is professional. That sounds kind of obvious. They're a professional team. They're a franchise in the NBA, but there are no, they're in a crazy American town. We know that's going to be an L for that midday Saturday game, or they just beat a great team. They're going to play down to their next opponent. From the front office to Nick Nurse to the players, their approach has been professional. So even though they've been hampered with injuries throughout the year, and even though missing these three guys in this stretch all hurt because they came right at the same time, I knew there was going to be certainly some challenges, and we've seen that, but I knew that they weren't just going to fall off a cliff because they've had a next man up mentality even when everyone has been healthy. That's just been their story.
Yeah, I like using the word professionalism. For me, that I think we're on the same wavelength. I just kept thinking toughness, that they're just such a tough team, and this is what having infrastructure means in the NBA, like having someone like Kyle Lowry, having some veterans like Serge Ibaka, having, you know, the credibility of now a championship team. It holds people to a certain standard when they have to show up to work. Like, obviously, Masai has done work in terms of bringing in certain types of players, like hardworking guys, like Terrence Davis, former football player, undrafted guy, plays hard every night. Bringing in Fred VanVleet, undrafted guy, plays hard every night. Like obviously they like that type of player, so they're targeting those guys to begin with. But you're never really cheated from an effort standpoint with the Raptors. Like, it doesn't matter how shorthanded they are, they don't tend to have efforts where they're just blah and then don't ever have a pushback throughout the game. Like, even if you look at the game against Dallas where they had the comeback, or the game just recently that they came back and won in. I'm blanking on who this was against. It wasn't the Heat. Who did they just play and had the
Nets?
Yes, that's it. The Nets game, where it's like the Nets are shorthanded too. They're a bad team, but Raps just never died, and they played hard throughout the rest of the game, and then finally waited until some shots got dropped. They have an effort level to them that I think it's top down, like where the credit comes from. Like, it's Masai, it's Nick Nurse, the organization, who they've attracted to, and the standard that they hold people to. Like, when Nurse said out of the gate, Rondé's not going to play and Stanley Johnson's not going to play because these guys haven't figured out, you know, the standard that we have right now. It's actually applied throughout the season. So that's like super commendable. Guys don't take nights off. But I would also like to say that toughness, it's not everything. And without Pascal Siakam specifically, my biggest takeaways there have been three different things, and I'll start with this. Not having those guys, knowing that the Raptors already struggled against the best teams in the NBA this season, and Siakam struggled against the best teams in the NBA this season, and they put up a pretty difficult record. I think they were 3-11 before those injuries happened against, you know, the top tier teams in the NBA. You have lost opportunities to test yourself against those groups, and you've lost like some really important reps as a group to see, you know, how you can develop and how you can get better in those games. Like, there's only a finite amount of them because there's not as many good teams or top tier teams in the NBA as I think we maybe thought there were going to be, and you've lost some chances to have those tests. But two is that without Pascal Siakam, it's a more difficult watch for me. Like, just from not only their chances of winning night in, night out, not only just like stylistically, but just as an entertainment product as a whole, because not only is he their best player, but he also represents the now and the future. And I've realized how much joy I'm getting out of watching Siakam and the void it's left without him.
I mean, I think for me, this team, even when they have injuries, should still be pretty competitive, and that's what we've seen. 5-4.
Competitive, but that entertaining, like that same level of entertainment level without Siakam. Do you feel that loss or no?
No, not really. I mean, he alone is an entertaining player, but from a style of play standpoint, I think they're fun to watch. And I think it's fun to root for guys like Chris Boucher and O'Shea Brissett and Terrence Davis, guys who many thought wouldn't have NBA careers, and they're playing in high leverage situations. In case of Terrence Davis, making a big mistake in a high leverage situation and not fouling when he should, but more importantly, getting great experience. Of the 4 losses since they've been without those guys, only one has been by 10 points or more. So they've been a very competitive team. I guess I'm not surprised because this is their strength. Their strength is their depth. Their strength is their institutional toughness. The reason why it's a safe bet to say, I don't care that Kawhi left. I don't care that Danny Green left. I don't care that there may be a championship hangover. When I look at the logo and I see Raptors, I should just bet the over 50 wins. They're going to be in that conversation. Is because of that depth, because that no matter if they have injuries or not, Nick Nurse is never going to have to look down the bench and play a guy who he thinks sucks. He's never going to be in that spot. On the flip side, though, the reason
you
why
think he feels that way when he plays Stanley Johnson?
Well, we'll see if he does play Stanley Johnson.
Yeah, he's sick.
The reason why, though, I think you look at this team, and even if they are completely healthy, you say, well, I'm not going to bet that they win 60 plus. I'm going to take the under on that, is because their ceiling is somewhat limited because Pascal Siakam is the only kind of game changer in terms of demanding a double team, erasing people's mistakes on the defensive end. And so the injuries I don't want to say they're not important, but they're built to be able to sustain them. I think the real questions are, even if completely healthy, how good can they actually be?
I just think about, but like we'll find that out, and it's unfortunate. That's what I was saying in terms of like losing those amount of games to find out how good they are. That part stings like right out of the gate. What I would ask you in terms of the comparison to try to follow me down the entertainment timeline of Siakam versus, we now know definitively that this is Siakam's team, not just from a he's the best player standpoint, but also from he's the lead driver of the entertainment product. The reason that you do want to watch this team, first of all, the half-court offense has essentially become non-existent without, and that makes sense because they lost Norm Powell, arguably like their best shooter off the dribble / scorer in isolation, who can get to the rim and score, in a pinch. Siakam, same thing, and Gasol, someone who's a pivot point and an anchor for their offense in the half court. They look really stagnant at times. It's really difficult when your best two players, your best two scorers, are both 6 feet and under, trying to get shot creation, especially late in the clock. Right? It hasn't been the same way without those guys. But compare your feelings in terms of enjoyment watching this team when Lowry and Serge Ibaka were out versus when Siakam and Gasol have been out.
I mean, I think was pretty enjoyable when Kyle Lowry plus the bench is leading them to a double-digit comeback.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's like a complete nothing. Like, I'm still watching these games and enjoying them. I'm just saying that for me, Siakam, this season is really it's maybe it's just within. We just watched Kawhi Leonard, and you can see what a best player does for your franchise. And the NBA is so much about your best player. But it's just that watching Siakam, it's not only just a representation of what they're doing in a night in, night out basis. You're getting to watch the evolution of someone who's going to continue to get better. With Kyle Lowry, it's almost like a reminder of what you have and what you have had, and you fall into these familiar grooves.
But I don't think this style of play is that dramatically different. Pascal is great and improving, but he's not at that level. If you watch the Mavs with Luka and without, it's like a different sport.
Well, see, I feel like that's what I'm watching with the Raptors.
If you watch the Lakers with LeBron and without, it's entirely different. If you watch the Warriors with Steph and without, it's entirely different. I don't think the Raptors are entirely different when Pascal's not playing. They're just better when he's playing.
For me, they are. I find their offense to be an eyesore right now. Again, you're right. If Kyle Lowry fills it up and he makes all his shots, then it's really fun to watch Kyle do his thing. Is it great watching Fred VanVleet have success, continue success? It has been. I always enjoy it. And one of my big positives that I'll get to in a second has been Serge Ibaka and the reminder of like what he actually is as an NBA player. But no, so much of my interest in this team now, especially coming off of the championship, is development and where this group is going. And you're right, finding out what the ceiling is. And Siakam represents the ceiling. And so without him there, and wondering exactly, the timeline. Like Norm Powell looks like he's going to come back before Siakam, which is, to me, a complete upset. When the Siakam injury happened, I don't know if we had a discussion about it privately, but I was kind of under the assumption that they were going to rest him a couple of games, that they were being overly cautious about it, not that it was actually something that was going to keep him out a couple of weeks. I've basically come to grips with the idea that my interest in the team is primarily focused on Siakam, what he is now, and taking those steps to be whatever it is that he can become.
But to that point, if Pascal is so important to your present and future, would you not handle him with kid gloves?
Oh, of course. Yeah, you have to. No doubt about it. Like, you don't want Siakam, so much of what he does is these incredibly athletic plays and these dangerous plays where he's, diving and falling away from the basket. You got to make sure he's 110% ready to come back.
One of my concerns earlier in the year with Pascal and Fred, both when Kyle and Serge were hurt and just throughout the year, because they've been, consistently the team's two best players or two of the three players up for All-Star nomination from the team. I mean, I guess everyone is up for All-Star nomination, but those are the guys that are getting legit looks. Was they both have had an uptick in minutes, but more importantly in responsibility, in role. And I just felt like it might be prudent to dial back the minutes because the scale of responsibility and role and usage has gone up so high. And now what we're seeing is they're both hurt. Now, causation and correlation are not always the same.
It's always tough.
But I just, again, because I'm not sure exactly what you're playing for in the 2019-2020 season, and these guys are theoretically, assuming they re-sign Fred, are going to be parts of your future in 2021 and 2022 and beyond. I would just love to see, I know load management is a swear word right now, but I would love to see their loads be managed because they're still young players and they're being asked to do things that they haven't ever done on any level.
Fred VanVleet, I think, only played 62 games last year. I think that's right. It's somewhere in that ballpark. He's now missed 6. This will be his 6th game that he's missed this year when he plays Portland. And yeah, you can't help but a guy like that could benefit from maybe dialing back on some of the minutes. Kyle Lowry has been similar throughout his career, someone that you have a tough time getting out of the lineup. I'm sure same with Fred VanVleet. But yeah, you would like to have the luxury on the odd night to be able to dial these guys back and not have them have their usage ratings go through the roof because Siakam's hurt. That's been a tricky part of this season is they've gone from the load management year where everyone kind of got to have this push in usage and this push in what they were being expected to do when Kawhi Leonard was out of the lineup, but it was only for the 18 games that he sat versus this year where it just feels like every player on this team has been asked to do at some point more than maybe the expectation of them was. And that even includes like Siakam and Lowry and Fred VanVleet and Gasol and Ibaka. Like no one was supposed to have the loads that they've had right now or that they've had throughout the season at one point or another this year.
And managing loads, and again,
we got to find a different word for this.
Yeah, people get up in arms.
We got to find a different word.
But there's a couple real reasons why you do it. Obviously, one is exposure, right? The more minutes you play, the more chances you have to step on a foot, fall on your elbow, get injured. It's just law of averages. But the other thing, and look at the 2 injuries with Pascal and Fred, they're soft tissue injuries. Those things happen for 2 reasons. Not that I'm a doctor, but I'll play one on this podcast. They happen because you are either out of shape or out of balance. One part of your body is too strong for the other, can't compensate, or you're just flat out of shape. Or 2, because your body is exhausted. And at some point, that tissue says, no mas, I can't do this anymore. And so that's why I would just, one of my things, and not to get to our resolutions before we get to them, but one of my things moving forward is I'd love to keep like a tight handle on how much they're playing.
Yeah.
And especially when you are in a situation where you know that there are depth players that can give you 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes more than what they are, and your team is not going to be that much worse off.
I actually have so much respect for your breadth of knowledge that when you did the doctor on TV thing, I was like, if we had a doctor in the room, I would have just been like, don't worry, we don't need you to do it. Donovan's got this covered, man. He'll be able to take care of it. He'll tell us how soft tissue injuries happen. I don't want to say the one benefit because there's been other ones. Like Terrence Davis has played well over his last 10. Like his efficiency has been solid. There's moments where I look at him and I think, is this a little bit too much responsibility for you? But ultimately, I think this is fine, the amount of minutes that he's had. It sucks that Fred got hurt, but he was playing well, again, in extended minutes in a bigger role. Lowry has continued to just basically maintain, if not elevate, his level of play sometimes based on what's asked of him. Overall, there's not a lot of negatives for me in terms of this run, but the biggest positive has been Serge Ibaka. He's just the reminder of what this guy is as an NBA player and the acknowledgement people should have for just the unselfishness and what a good teammate he is. We live now in a bit of a show-off culture, right? The way that people are with Instagram and social media and blah, 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 blah. And not to get too deep on this, but I don't know Serge Ibaka, but he just seems very genuine. Like he just genuinely seems like a good, unselfish guy. And Gasol has taken so many accolades, and rightfully so. Gasol is awesome. And I know Ibaka had the big moment in Game 7 against Philly, and he had his moments throughout the postseason, and no one would say, like, Ibaka wasn't important.
Step back 3, Game 6.
That's what I'm saying, is like, he's had his moments. But it was almost like, well, him as a reserve center, like, this is actually the role he's supposed to play. Ibaka's been a walking double-double with Marc Gasol out. He's taken huge responsibilities on his shoulders, and there are a ton of games, like the last Celtics game that they won included, where you looked around and said, Serge Ibaka is the Raptors' best player tonight. He's averaging 18 points and 10 rebounds a game as a starter this season. He's been lights out defensively. He's been consistent. He's been knocking down his shots in the low post. He's been setting great screens. You're just reminded of the Raptors gave up Terrence Ross and a first-round pick to get that guy. And at one point, he was supposed to be the needle mover for this franchise of taking them from being the team that lost to Cleveland to beating Cleveland. And he got exposed. He had the moment where LeBron spins the ball on his finger in front of him. He wasn't quite that guy. Kawhi was that guy. But Serge is just so good. And I can't help but think watching him, like, got to extend this guy. You got to find a way to make some of this work where Serge Ibaka is here for the next couple of years, and he's got a lot more left in the tank than I think some of us may have not given him credit for. I don't want to speak for you, but I certainly thought I didn't know if Ibaka could do this at this rate for this long, this consistently, like what we've seen over this stretch.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't want them to re-sign him the last time. Now you want them to extend him again.
There's always a number, right? There's a number and there's a term where you say no. But I think team chemistry matters. And I think having guys who are that talented, who are willing to step back and take a back seat, or who can step up in a big moment, who can play with confidence, it matters. Like it's a big thing. And yeah, man, I didn't want them to extend Serge Ibaka that first time around. I thought that contract was too big. I thought the way the NBA was going in centers and the way that he had some regression stats over the years. But right now, who's been the more impressive Raptor, like consistently night in, night out, than Ibaka, considering, what we were expecting him to do before the Gasol injury, before the Siakam injury? When he comes off the floor, you're counting the minutes till he's back in the game.
Well, and he was, by definition, a bench player last year and for huge parts of this year.
Right.
But
yeah, you forget because JV was also there, right? It wasn't just Gasol.
Yeah, and they were shuttling back and forth in the starting lineup last year. But Game 6, end of the game, Serge Ibaka was one of the 5 on the floor in the NBA Finals. The other thing to me, if we're having this Ibaka conversation, if I can take it in a totally different direction, I think he resigns. I think that number is probably favorable when you look at the fact that there's probably not going to be a lot of centers that people are interested up in the upcoming market. You look at the fact that Clint Capella got 15, and Drummond is on 21 and looking for more. I think the Raptors could do a team friendly-ish deal with Ibaka, who's now 30. Because you know what Serge knows? One, I talked to Brad Fay, and I said, well, what's the biggest difference being around the team this year in comparison to last? And he's like, Serge Ibaka, he just has the air of a champion. Like, he's just freed. Like, whenever he talks, he'll preface things with, well, I'm a champion.
Yeah, remember when he did the KD interview?
Yeah.
And now I'm a champion.
I'm a champion now.
Yeah.
And I think he is so comfortable in his place, literally his place here, but his place in the league, now having won a championship. We forget how close he got in Oklahoma City and never got it done. And now he finally did. And so I think whether he's a starter, whether he's coming off the bench, whether he's a mentor, whether he's a big player, I think he's happy because he loves it here and he's a champion. The other thing is, I think he's happy because Avec Classe is cashing in. Find me someone in Toronto sports who is making more loot off of the court than Serge Ibaka is right now. He's making loot off the court thanks to us. Food lovers unite.
Sportsnet.
Serge Ibaka is
breaking out the wallet for Serge Ibaka.
The best athletes in Canada. He's got Bo on one side. He's got Penny and Bianca on the other side. He's got a co-host in Bissonnette. Loblaw said, yeah, we'll pay for the entire halftime on Christmas Day after people were fighting for us to get a Christmas Day game forever.
He's the head of the table.
And he's the head of the table.
He's the head of the table.
He's learning
with Bianca Andreescu.
He's learning what a home run is.
Yeah.
He's learning what retirement means in tennis. You talk about him being so honest. It was so lovable.
Yeah, I know.
So whether it's,
I couldn't believe how much I actually liked that feature, to be honest.
Please. I have it on loop. Yeah. So he signed a good food deal. Serge Ibaka.
No, you're going to get this hard into the
Serge Ibaka, who has all his food catered for him, has a good food deal. My guy has a Nobis jacket deal, which he's only wearing in Toronto. He's not wearing them in Africa.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, he is doing well. Shopping at Holtz with Fred VanVleet doing features.
Yeah.
Serge is very, very comfortable.
If you're looking at just like who's the most marketable guy in Toronto right now, Ibaka has the championship pedigree. He's got all the different He's got all the different ways that he brands himself. It's like almost Shaquille-esque, like the original man, Mafuzi Man. Like it's getting to the point where you're like, he's almost got as many nicknames for himself as he actually does names in his real name.
He has the cheekbones.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Serge ain't a bad guy to look at.
Nope.
Like, ask the ladies what they think about Serge Ibaka.
the guys.
I mean, don't do it if you're insecure and you watch Raptors games with your girlfriend and you're thinking to yourself, she would never cheat on me with one of the players. She would, and it would be with Serge Ibaka, number one on the list. So, yeah, you're right. I think that's actually a big reason as to why this is just going to be an amicable relationship. One is that Serge Ibaka is not only just a serviceable player, he's a good player. Two, the Raptors are going to need a center next year, and they're probably going to need someone who does it a little bit team-friendly to keep some flexibility open. And you mentioned that center market. These are some of the guys that can play the 5 for you next year. Derek Favors, free agent. Lots of guys. Willie Cauley-Stein, free agent. DeMarcus Cousins, we'll see what that ends up being, free agent. JaVale McGee, Robin Lopez, Enes Kanter, Myers Leonard, Kelly Olynyk, Tristan Thompson.
Drummond if he opts out.
Marc Gasol, Drummond if he opts out, which he probably will. Like, that's a lot of guys. I think if he looks at it from a how much money can I make off the court as well standpoint, where is he going to be able to even come close to that outside of Toronto? Here's the problem. I wonder if he's so big here now that he's like, I could leave and I would still come up here for the Sportsnet dinner, and Sportsnet and Loblaws are like, no problem. Like, head on up, Serge. We'll buy you the ticket.
I don't think he's hosting when they got a Christmas
Atlanta
Day
Hawks
game
Center
next year. I don't think he's hosting the dinner with
right.
DeGrasse and Felix and Vladdy. If he is the starting center for the Atlanta Hawks or the Brooklyn Nets, I don't think that plays as well.
You're probably right, but yeah.
I also don't think he's getting paid what he got paid to do that. If he's hosting the dinner for Fox Sports Ohio, if he's the Cleveland Cavaliers starting center.
I'll put it this way, too. And not that you would have to choose one or the other. I think there's actually a scenario where Gasol can only get a 1-year deal and that the Raptors could actually just push his cap number really high and offer him the 1-year money. But what I never thought I would have said is if the Raptors had to choose between the two players, I think the case is becoming stronger for Serge Ibaka given his age, given his likelihood of staying. I know he's also been hurt this year, but Gasol's 35 years old. That's the number one reason why going into next year you would look at it and say, well, at 36, how many minutes can you give us? Would you not, if both guys want 2-year deals, would you not pick Serge?
I would pick Serge if they wanted 1-year deals. I would pick Serge if they wanted 3-year deals. I would pick
if they
Serge,
both just wanted 1-year deals,
period.
I think I'd still take Gasol.
And Gasol's 34. Okay, put a little respect on it.
Sorry, he'll be 35 when he's a free agent.
Just had a birthday. Happy belated birthday to you, Mark. Or actually, sorry, has a birthday coming up. So he's turning 35.
Wait, when's his birthday?
29th of this month.
Yeah, okay.
January.
So yeah, he'll be 36 next year.
Happy early birthday to you, Mark. But I think it's Serge.
Yeah.
The erosion, maybe the nicest word I can think of his offensive game. Mm-hmm. Well, his offensive scoring game.
Yeah, not the other stuff. That's going to be there forever, Sabonis style.
Correct. But it's going to be harder when people are playing zone off of him because he refuses to shoot. The erosion of his offensive game, and I suppose the expansion of Serge's offensive game, if he continues to knock down threes consistently, will allow him to, have this like secondary life in his career where he's Sam Perkins North.
Sam Perkins North.
Yeah.
Big Smooth. My guy. Like the reference.
I
Except for
knew
Sam
you would.
Perkins wasn't doing what Serge Ibaka can do around the rim. Yeah,
No.
I guess the case against Gasol is that I really thought the Raptors' defense would be in a little bit tough without him and Siakam. And again, the personnel of Ujiri and the way that the team plays, the professionalism, the toughness, however you want to put it, they've still had a top 10 defensive rating since those guys have been out. And a lot of that has to do with Serge Ibaka and his rim protection and his ability to still defend out to the perimeter. So, yeah, I hope that something can get done there. It's so weird to think of this Raptors season where there's like Fred has to get a new contract. Gasol you're going to have to negotiate with. Serge Ibaka you're going to have to negotiate with. All with this specter of, well, you can't hamper your free agent opportunities down the line because now this has become more of a destination point than ever, and you have Masai Ujiri, who you need to be able to sit down at the table with the best stars in the game. It's a weird time to be a Raptors fan, thinking about which free agents are you going to choose to keep of big level names versus who you're going to be trying to pursue. Very, very different times. Quick break, and then let's come back and do some resolutions. So Raptors resolutions. It's 2020. I've been doing some. What was your resolution?
I don't believe in resolutions, really.
Yeah, you just kind of nailing it the whole way
What's
through.
the audible sigh? Like I said something to you personally, Amel.
Just set a resolution for fun.
You don't have.
Is it
You don't
fun?
have one thing that you want to
Is it fun
improve
when
upon yourself.
February 1, you're like, I already didn't do that thing? I just feel like you don't need the calendar to tell you, oh, I need to do these things.
Maybe not you, Mr.
just-
Motivational,
if
Mr.
something
Self-starter.
happens in April 26th, you're like, you know what? Gonna hold this one. Come December 3/1, I'm gonna drop this as a resolution.
No, but it's
just
a time
make
of
changes in your life when
self-reflection.
you want to.
But it's a time of self-reflection. You're home. You're full of turkey. You're
I'm
in the
always
holidays.
reflecting.
You
I
are.
stay reflecting. I'm a rear view mirror.
Do you have a reflecting
in this
pool?
bad boy.
Do
What's
you
that?
have koi in a little reflecting pool, and
I
you
do.
sit there
Yeah.
in your home,
That's
in your
my-
mansion, and you just
That's my feng shui.
toy your finger in through the water.
I don't do that.
And then you
I
let
believe
it drop.
in goal setting,
Yeah.
but I don't believe in
What's your goal for 2020?
resolutions. I don't have one.
Okay, so not so big on goal setting then. So once in a while you set a goal.
Actually, here I'll give you.
Thank you.
Give you this. So instead of resolutions, because I don't believe in them, I haven't setting them. I got to do this exact thing. Although I do have like a group of friends who we kind of email and keep track of our goals and let us know. So I suppose in that sense I do. But my wife came up with the idea of maybe just coming up with a word, like a word that you kind of want to have at the front of your mind, that you want to embody, that you want to think of. So instead of setting the specific goal and, man, you know, if I don't reach it exactly, my years of failure, or if I reach it by like a decimal point, my years of success, that seems too binary. But maybe having a word that you want to keep with you throughout the year and carry you what you want to be about. So I suppose I have a word, not a resolution.
I'm honestly at the edge of my seat. What is
Well, I'm
it?
not going to share it with you.
What?
It's personal.
It's personal?
Well, yeah. Okay, I've got two.
Well, are you going to give me a fake dummy word that you're going to float out there?
No, my two words for 2020, even though I didn't do the exercise correctly and I chose two instead of one, savor and evolve. Those are the two words. I think they're pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, they are. They're good words. I think that's pretty solid, especially since, the older you get. I was listening to a podcast the other day. Time goes by a lot faster. Just the way that your internal clock is. Essentially that you're not experiencing as many new things as you get older. You get in routines, so you're not experiencing new things. You don't get the same dopamine hits as you do. So maybe savoring the moment is a solid thing. And you're just naturally a guy who evolves a lot. You do a lot of different projects. So that part of it is just, you're a motivated guy. I'm not surprised that that's a part of what you want to do. My resolution was to just not be so fat all the time and eat less in bed. that was not so complicated. It's like, hey man, maybe just cut back on the odd drinks out. Like maybe be cool about mixing in an extra salad here or there.
But
maybe go for a run.
But is that a tangible goal? Like, do you have a weight amount that you want to lose or you want to be at consistently?
No, here's the thing. I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy.
What does that mean?
It means
you're alive, so technically you're healthy.
Yeah, but it means I want to be able to, go for a run and not feel like I'll never walk again the next day. Like that's it.
How far of a run?
Like 5K. If I do 5K, then my legs the next day are like, hey, that's it for you. Like,
See, this
shutting
is
her down.
exactly why I don't set resolutions
Why?
and wishy-washy goals.
That's not
It's
wishy-washy.
How are you managing that? Because if you went on a marathon run,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to walk the next day.
Yeah.
If you went on a 400-meter run, you would.
Yeah.
So what's the goal?
To be in shape. To be like,
But what does that mean?
to be like, let me do some exercise and not feel horrible like the next day. To just be in good shape, man. Get cut one more time. I'm only going to be young for so long, right? Can I not have this body for one more test drive? Can we not just go for one more ride together? Come on, kid. Get it together.
You can do whatever you want. I think the issue, which is not a you issue, you can do whatever you want. But me, in terms of why I'm not big on resolutions, is because, well, how do you measure that? Like, how do you decide if you did or did not achieve that goal unless there's something specific that you put towards
I'll know
it.
when I start.
So if you said, listen, I want to run a 5K for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be the first time.
I don't like organized running.
Okay.
I like it a solo.
I think you just don't like organized.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to read more and I want to exercise more, be a little bit healthier.
Okay. Raptors resolutions. Do you have anything tangible for them?
I do. Let me start with a fun one. Nick Nurse, your New Year's resolution. Breathe, buddy. Just breathe. Just next time you think that you should have got a foul call or you're feeling a way about a certain referee, just in through the nose, out through the mouth. Or is it the other way around? I'm not a big yoga guy, obviously.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be a mouth breather.
Yeah, okay, you breathe in through the nose, feel your chakra, out through the mouth. Nick Nurse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It's just a lot, man. I worry about you, Nick. I worry about your blood pressure. I worry about how red your face gets sometimes. I just think, don't sweat the small stuff. Maybe if, you're up 15 against the Atlanta Hawks and Terrence Davis gets fouled, chill. Just let it go. It is what it is. You win some, you lose some. That's all. So Nick Nurse, breathe.
Do you know what a chakra is?
No.
Okay. I think it's a Swedish.
I told you, resolution is to read more.
I find it very interesting that your first resolution is for Nick Nurse, someone who, I don't know if there is anyone in sport who had a better 2019.
We all can improve, Donovan, even you.
Winning.
The infallible Donovan Bennett, who has no resolutions, at least has thoughts about what they want to do in words. So Nick Nurse, I think his is pretty light. I couldn't find a way to critique Nick Nurse's coaching style.
I can.
Breathe.
I can, actually.
Oh, you're going to give Nick Nurse a resolution as well?
I'm going to, not him personally, because he's winning at life, but his coaching style for certain. And just not overall, but in the moment. We talked about load managing before, and it's debatable whether you should load manage two guys who are on entry-level contracts. It's not debatable. They need to load manage Kyle Lowry. He's played 40 minutes plus in the 9 games since they had the Detroit injuries.
Damn.
You know how many times he played 40 minutes plus in the previous 158 regular season games? Just take a wild guess. How many times? 158 is the sample size.
Over 40?
11 times.
I was just going to... No, I was saying over 40 minutes. I was actually going to guess a little bit more than that, but still, that's shocking. 11 times.
11 times. He's going to be 34 in March. Happy, very early birthday to you, Kyle Lowry. I think they need to play him less.
My other resolution is for the team. Keep shooting. Keep shooting threes. Shoot all the threes on the planet. Because the only formula, I think, for this team to actually go deep in the playoffs starts with Siakam, it starts with Lowry, it starts with all these guys, but is to outmath the teams. And it's becoming more and more apparent that when you watch the Raptors have a night like they did against the Miami Heat, that it seems miserable. It seems, why not go inside more? Do you have that? The Raptors don't have those dudes who can get to the rim. They have one guy, really. They have one guy in Pascal Siakam that can score at the basket with real consistency. Even Norm Powell that's not, I would say he's capable of it, but it's not his biggest forte anymore. It's now three-point shooting. The Raptors, despite losing all these guys, despite all this volume shooting and everything else, they still sit 6th in three-point percentage this year. 6th. They're a good three-point shooting team. Good volume teams go through it on some nights, but this is the way that we found out that the Raptors are designed. They might not have a Danny Green anymore, but the only way that this team can continue to win is to shoot. So do not be bothered. Continue to shoot. In fact, shoot more.
This is something they're already doing, but I think they could really lean in, do it even better. Dominate development. I want to make it their brand. This week, shout out to Paul Watson Jr. Got called up from 905 to the Atlanta Hawks. Justin Anderson, who has been killing the G League.
I feel like Justin Anderson's been killing G League since the G League was a thing.
Well, I mean,
that's all. I know his name because he's good at it.
Well, guess what? He's about to be killing the NBA because some of his highlights have been ridiculous. Gets called up by Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. The job that Dan Tolzman and Jamma and Charles Kissy have done with the development of that program. Tyler Ennis, friend of the pod, has been killing it with 905. is commendable, but they're leaning into it a little bit. On social, they welcomed Paul Watson Jr. when he got his call up with "Welcome to Atlanta" on the bus, and everyone was cheering for him. The song "Welcome to Atlanta" by Ludacris. Justin Anderson, in a film session, they surprised him with the message that he'd been called up with Brooklyn. I want this to be a whole thing, a whole flex, that it is so obvious that they're not only promoting the fact that they're putting people in the league, that they're celebrating it. Not only is it a success that O'Shea Brissett and Chris Boucher have getting good minutes in the G League, but also changing NBA games. But I want the entire franchise to lean into the fact that you want to get to the league, maybe with our team, might be with somebody else, but this is the place you got to do it. I want it to be like signing day. When someone goes and gets called up, we're filming it. We got a bunch of hats, and you pick one and put it on. I want them to dominate development on all levels, and they're starting to do it, and I love to see it.
Your resolution there is like if David Goggins was like, I'm going to run 18 hours in a row, and in 2020 my resolution is to run 20 hours in a row.
Yeah.
It's like they're doing it, but yeah, there's always room to improve. And in that vein of, or in that spirit of development, my most serious, and this, I don't mean to have this be critical because he's still a very young player, and we sometimes get I think this is your line, that development isn't always linear and that sometimes things could take a little bit more time, and that overall OG Anunoby and his development curve has been awesome. It's right on track, if not exceeding where you thought OG Anunoby was supposed to be. But one of the things I thought I was going to see a little bit more of was OG's usage rating and his offensive responsibility go up with Siakam and with Gasol and Norm out of the lineup. I thought it was going to be showcase OG time. Let's see what OG did. It's the book report. Show me what you did this last summer. OG Anunoby needs to improve his handle and his body control. What I've noticed from this stretch with Sans the Stars and OG Anunoby is that he's still someone who relies on others to put him in a position to succeed offensively. He's got basketball IQ that you just simply cannot teach. He knows how to cut. He knows how to pass. He knows when to try to take his opportunities. But the ball handling just is not sharp enough yet where he's able to get to his spots. And he's so athletic and he's so overpowering that if he could just figure out a couple of things, he should be able to get to the basket at will versus a lot of the different matchups that he draws. And why can't he play power forward? Why can't he be a big small forward? He should be able to kind of have one of the Siakam advantages with his physical attributes, that if you get defended by someone bigger than you, that you're taking them to the basket with your speed, or if you're defended by someone smaller, that you should be able to bully them. And as of right now, his offensive game it's not refined. It's a good shooter. It's someone who the other night against the zone where they let him touch the ball in the paint as the guy in the middle, that was nice. But if OG Anunoby ever wants to be the best version of himself, it's going to require dribbling, and then when he gets to those spots, body control to finish.
Is that your last resolution?
That's my other resolution is just stay healthy.
Okay.
You did load management, so I was like, yeah,
that's everyone's resolution every year. My last one, and it's a Bill Parcells saying or quote: "Don't take the cheese." He would tell this to his quarterbacks or his teams after they're playing well, or they're high, or people are pumping them up. Oh, you're so good. It's like, don't take the cheese. The analogy being, the mouse, right, takes the cheese, gets caught in the trap. Kind of stay even keeled, highs. You're the same. When things get low, you're the same. Really excited about this team. Fun to watch. People are mad that they're not higher in ESPN power rankings, and they're the defending champs, and look how good they are, look how fun they are. Front office, don't take the cheese. 19-0 they are against teams below 500. Now that the Bucks lost finally to a team that was below 500 and made you lose some money.
Mm-hmm. Too soon.
That it's just the Lakers at 20-0 and the Raptors, only teams perfect record in games with teams below 500. Great. They're dominating who they should dominate. Here's the problem. Well, that means all your losses have come against teams above 500. In fact, you are just 5-12 against teams above 500. Crazy thing in the playoffs, virtually all the teams you play above 500. So this team, we talked about it earlier. The ceiling, not sure how high it is. The floor is really high. But if you think in February that you are one piece, one trade away from winning a chip the way you were with Kawhi, I just don't think that's true. Unless you're trading for Kawhi again. Mm-hmm. So I think the notion of them being total sellers, which I was a proponent for coming into the year, is gone. They're too competitive. They're too good. And their young guys are getting real hands-on training of being in a good franchise, and they're going to be in a round or two in the playoffs.
Well, plus, two of their assets going at a deadline are two guys that they would have at least had conversations on, and Norm Powell and Gasol got hurt.
Yeah. I mean, they'll come back before the February deadline, but yeah. But I don't think that they are one move away from hoisting the Larry O'Brien again. And so that's why, unless someone blows you away with something, I would say just have some self-assessment and know who you are. Yeah. 5-12, 17 games. That's a relatively large sample size with teams that are above 500.
I think that self-assessment, knowing who you are, is also the one last resolution that I debated talking about, which is when Pascal Siakam comes back, the resolution has to be twofold for Kyle Lowry and Pascal, which is one, Siakam identifying and grabbing the reins as this team's most important player and as their franchise player, and Kyle understanding that that's the direction of the franchise. And I'm not saying that those guys haven't done it, but there were certainly some moments when Lowry first came back where Lowry was shooting and still the guy that the Raptors were looking to in late game situations. I think about that Miami Heat game specifically, and yes, Bam Adebayo had locked up Pascal Siakam, but I think that was a example of the worst thing you want to see with the Raptors, which is in a big game that Pascal Siakam is not aggressive and he floats away from trying to be the guy at the end of games or the one that closes them, and Kyle Lowry automatically just assuming that role and taking over despite how he's playing. And that those two, the resolution is going to have to be for them to find a way where their relationship is as symbiotic as it was with Fred VanVleet and Siakam when Kyle Lowry was out of the lineup. Because I think that those are the Raptors' two best players. Fred is very good, Gasol is very good, but still the Raptors' two best players in 2020 are Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam. And their resolution should have to be find a way where you are symbiotic to the point where people do not question the dynamic of the relationship and you are getting the most out of it as possible.
I think that's more of a Pascal Siakam issue than it is a Kyle Lowry issue.
Yeah.
Game six
I'm not even
of the finals,
saying
who's
it
the best
is an issue.
Raptor?
Sorry.
Game 6 of the NBA Finals, who's the best Toronto Raptor?
Yeah, they have games where it basically goes back and forth in terms of who the best player on the team is going to be. But I think for the most part, the night in, night out basis, like they're always going to be a meritocracy that plays the hot hand. It's part of what makes their chemistry so great. But what I'm saying is on a night in, night out basis, those reps, the ones that are most important, are to have more of the Siakam games at the end of the ledger than there are Lowry games.
But I think, and this is part of his learning curve, Siakam learning to be demonstrative in dominating and asking for the ball. Kyle Lowry is, at best, a 6-foot computer who at all times is analyzing and probing and trying to figure out what is the best, most efficient thing I can do in this very moment. And if that computer looks around and says, well, these 4 other dudes on the court don't want to take a shot, his calculation is, okay, well, I better take it. And I have the cachet and the stones, frankly, to take it and live with the consequence. But if Kyle Lowry knows that Pascal Siakam has the matchup, I don't think Kyle Lowry has an issue if giving him a dime and taking the assist and not the 2 points. Like, I don't think he cares if his triple-double comes 10, 10, and 10 or 30, 10, and 10. Like, I honestly don't think he does because he knows he's going to be able to impact the game in so many other ways. So I understand what you're saying, but I think the responsibility in making that resolution a reality falls on the shoulders of Pascal more so than Kyle.
A lot of people are afraid of artificial intelligence and where it's leading us as society. And some people believe, well, what if the computers view us in a malevolent way? And for my sake, I hope the computers are not like Kyle Lowry, because then we're doomed. All right? Like the Kyle Lowry.
Would it be better if the computers are like Kawhi Leonard?
Yes.
I disagree. Because at least
0-1, 0-1, efficiency. At
least you can read how Kyle Lowry feels.
Yeah.
Jarrett Allen knew exactly how Kyle Lowry felt about him.
That was amazing, by the way. just how he looked. I think he said, "Who are you?" to Jared Allen. I think that's what he.
No, the lips I read were, "What are you going to do?"
Oh, I thought it was a "Who are you?" Like he was like, "Who are even you?" But what are you gonna do?
He could
Is even more bold because what Kyle Lowry is half the size of Jared Allen. His hands, like Jared Allen's pure profession is to slap basketballs away from the rim. Like that's what he's working on every day. Like he's just like one of those little birds that dips and goes up and down. It's like that's what he's supposed to be. Like all he does is practice like swatting someone from a leverage point. I would just not want to mess with someone who gets paid to do that.
I mean, he could have said whatever he wanted to, but the "Who are you?"
The gall
wouldn't necessarily play because Kyle Lowry knows who he is. They were in close proximity.
I guess that's like more
in
of like
Vegas for Team USA. But what are you going to do is like, oh, I know you.
Lowry tried to
and I
pop
know
his
you're
shoulder
not
out.
going to do anything.
Don't let it be mistaken. Lowry was like, I want to bend your elbow in a way that hurts. I love Kyle Lowry. It just the way that he's the small dog that thinks he's big. I love it. Honestly, if he was bigger, he'd be Zebo. Do you want to talk about David Stern before we go?
Sure.
You want to talk about Drummond? What do you want to do here? We're at 50.
The Drummond thing's not going anywhere. We can talk about David Stern.
Yeah, just we were off, and obviously David Stern passed away.
Yeah.
And did you do a video essay? I saw you did some content for Stern, or no? Am I mistaken?
I mean, you didn't see it because you just made it up.
No, I
didn't do a
saw
video
like
essay on
okay.
Stern.
I thought I saw something on a Twitter feed of something that you had done. No,
I
what I saw is you had posted a video of you at the draft in a suit. And
Most
you were
people at the draft
interviewing.
are in a suit.
No, but that suit was I enjoyed that suit.
What?
I enjoyed. Yeah.
So did you want me to go to the draft in a hoodie? Like, what are
I
you talking
didn't say
about?
go in a hoodie. I'm just saying that it just times fly is all I said.
It was a black suit
Yeah.
with a gray shirt.
You looked young.
It was in, I think, 13?
Yeah, Anthony Bennett draft.
Okay, so I was like 6.5 years ago.
Yeah. I'm
old.
just saying you looked young.
So I've aged, is what you're saying.
I don't think you wear that suit anymore. Let's say that too.
I mean,
Suits go
probably
fast.
not.
That's what you need to know. You got to update the suit collection every 6 years, I guess.
Yeah, I hope my resolution has evolved. I hope my fashion has evolved since the 2013 NBA draft.
I knew I saw something. That's
Listen,
all. Yeah.
nobody who was in Brooklyn for that draft dresses the same now. Not the players who walked across the stage.
What
not
did Anthony
me.
Bennett wear? Red pinstripe? I think that's what he did.
I don't remember. Anyways, I had interviewed Stern at the draft after Anthony Bennett went 1. That is what you're referring to. And so, I mean, tragic, obviously, he dies of a brain hemorrhage at 77. And why don't you talk about Stern first? Because I interviewed him, I met him, so as brief as it was. So I guess I had an intersection with him. But you had an intersection with him because he was part of removing 2 franchises from locales that you have a lot of time for.
I lived in Victoria when we got the Grizzlies. And I grew up a Seattle Supersonics fan. So while I can acknowledge and will always acknowledge David Stern's importance in the growth of the game, what he did to build it as a business, the template that he left, the state of the game from where it began to where he left it, I think David Stern hung around too long. I think that he lasted as commissioner of the NBA for far too many seasons. And to me, as a Sonics fan and as someone who cared about the Grizzlies, yeah, I will always remember David Stern as the guy who essentially handed Clay Bennett the Oklahoma City Thunder in an extremely crooked deal where they shanghaied the city. They had no intentions of staying in the NBA. And it was an awful thing to do to the city of Seattle. It wasn't your normal moving of a city. This was akin to when the Colts got packed up and moved. Like, that's what that was. It was a rogue agent that held the city hostage for a bad arena deal, and David Stern oversaw that, and he allowed that to happen, and it cost the NBA one of, I still believe, their crown jewel franchises. And one of the worst things about it is that now, because Seattle is there, always threatening other franchises, I know that someday there is the potential for this to happen to a different group of fans, for different fans to see, like what happened in Milwaukee, where public money was once again used in a really massive way to fund a public arena, or to fund the Bucks arena, so that they would keep their team, so that the threat of Seattle would not be looming. It's what's going to happen in Memphis. It's going to happen all over the NBA, and it all started with this one place. And so, yeah, David Stern gave up on the Pacific Northwest, and he had one of the biggest hands in stealing. Like, he introduced Clay Bennett to the Oklahoma City Hall of Fame induction. It was criminal what he did to that team, to that fan base, and to that city. And so my feelings about him will always be complicated, because I can acknowledge that he helped propel the game I love more than any other, but I also will always harbor resentment against him for his involvement in overseeing the worst Shanghaiing of a franchise in NBA history.
Yeah, I mean, life is all about perspective, and
Right.
you look at that transaction through those eyes, which is totally fair and valid.
Well, there's multiple documentaries on how shady it was. Like, it's not just me.
Right,
Like, the facts are the facts.
but fans in New Orleans say to David Stern, well, thank you for saving our franchise, saving a big piece of business in our city, and putting them in Oklahoma City for a year and then putting them back. And you know, David Stern does a solid to Oklahoma City for being there in a lurch by eventually giving them a franchise when one came up. He had a 20-year tenure as commissioner. And so in that span, if you're a commissioner or the leader of anything, there's going to be some misses. And I think his resume warts are certainly there, and they're certainly valid. Donald Sterling. And just Donald Sterling, period.
Dress code.
The dress code is a bit nuanced, but the dress code.
I mean, the dress code was basically, hey, we don't like the way that you guys look. And
I think it was, hey, we think our customers don't like the way you guys look.
Yeah, but guess what? He enforced that.
He did. But also, it was, you know, at best discriminatory, at worst racist.
I think it's both of those things.
But also, I will say, when we talked off air about the fashion and how that's being a big part of the sport, a lot of that came from the dress code. Like the fact that LeBron and CP3 are buying their teammates suits, and everyone is doing a deep dive on like where everything is from and how much it costs. That all came from the dress code. Like that competition of guys wanting to outdo themselves,
people making the
how
best
they
of
walk
an
in.
unhealthy situation is something that like humanity has done throughout its existence. It's just like that was like I don't think that the ends justify the means. There is all I'm saying.
The way some of the things that it focused on were probably a little bit discriminatory. The way it was messaged was problematic, but on its face value, informing your players that as a professional you should arrive looking professional.
But Michael Jordan did that long before David Stern ever arrived.
Right, but then Michael Jordan doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
What Allen Iverson wearing a quadruple XL T-shirt and 8 chains.
It didn't matter at all. He didn't wear it on the court.
True, and but if you wore it on the bench, maybe that would be a little bit more problematic.
Yeah, but the problem is that
people wear suits for a reason.
But I don't even think it is problematic. And the other reason is like, what bothers me the most. Didn't think we were going to go here today, but it's the idea that we're associated with hip hop culture. That it's like you wanted attention without. You wanted to essentially associate yourself with hip hop culture and then disassociate yourself from anything that was somewhat negative. So it's like if it would be a positive for you, then you want to do it. And now, like, I just look at the way the NBA is. Like the other night, for example, like they have the court and they're paying homage to Biggie Smalls.
Yeah.
And it's like you look back at what the league actually used to stand for, and that was a reminder to me of like how hypocritical this organization has been, and that was the David Stern thing. Was like, I don't want to be any part of that. We're basketball. We're separate from that.
Well, I think
and now they profit immensely from it.
Well, I just think there's a new leader who is younger than, because if David Stern still was commissioner, I don't think there would be a Biggie Smalls court. I don't, right? So I think they've evolved with new leadership. But on the front end, David Stern was certainly progressive in terms of taking the game internationally. In terms of making the game a show. The NBA dunk contest is something that came about on David Stern's watch. The I Love This Game campaign, the NBA's Fantastic campaign, the idea that you're selling not just franchises, you're selling stars. The NFL sold franchises. You love the logos, the Packers, the Cowboys. the NBA said, well, maybe, but we want you to love Michael Jordan. We want you to love Charles Barkley. They sold the stars and promoted the stars and actually gave the stars a handbook that, hey, you guys can actually make all of this money on the side. That's good for you, but it's also good for us because we could then not necessarily pay you as much as you're probably worth on the open market. Where the other leagues, like the NFL, would be like, no, we don't want you making any money on the side. We want all the money to come to us. So I just think that he was, there are certain scenarios for sure where he was regressive, but there are much more where he was progressive. And I will say this.
He was an excellent businessman. I'll never refute that.
True. But I think he was also a visionary, right? There's people who make money. There's people who see future money to be made. And that's with the Dream Team and NBA Africa camps and games globally. And coming to Canada with 2 franchises, like as much as I understand people from Vancouver saying, well, I don't love this guy. You also have to remember, well, you wouldn't have had a team in the first place if not for David Stern. And I don't think I can honestly say that I have this job, this microphone in front of me, if not for David Stern. I just don't think the game would be as big and specifically as global and as big in Canada if not for him. So that to me is how I will remember his legacy.
Not me. All right, we got to run. We already ran long. Again, please subscribe to this podcast, share it on Instagram, share it on Twitter, do all those different things. Thanks as always to the associates, the day ones. We love you. See you next week.